Real True Education, Not Fake News. It's the 17th of May 2021 and we've had a very cold spring. I've never known growth to be this late. The swallows are here, but not in the same numbers, not in the same vigour. I didn't see one here till the 29th of April, and normally it'll be the 10th of April, and I didn't see many of them then until maybe well into May, so they're 3 or 4 weeks late, although they have been in other places. The cuckoo has been heard in a few places, not in Cavan. Anyway, I was banned for a long time, and I understand I'm back now from YouTube, and essentially what I've decided is I'll still post videos on YouTube, but you can't ask them why, you can't negotiate, you have no rights whatsoever. So we still make use of it, and I'm still looking at an alternative to it. I don't have that many viewers, but some of my videos got 2,000 and more than 2,000 views. If you count up them all, I've had a lot of views, and people meet me and tell me they enjoy the videos, and so why not keep it going, because there isn't that many people who will come on like this and do it and who will take the time. But in any event, we have to live with what we have, and even if we are witnessing the destruction of our whole society and our whole way of life, I'm afraid to tell you that we can only complain, we can only do what's possible, because the fact of the matter is we don't have candidates to stand in our elections in Ireland, and we don't have people to elect those candidates even if they were right. So we're on a roller coaster to a strange and unusual place. Where it will lead us, I don't know. But one of the things that, before I go into the main subject, because this is about Sean Quinn and Quinn Holdings and his companies, the Fermanagh businessman, is I see there on the news that Marty Whelan, now for those who don't live in Ireland, Marty Whelan is a well-known TV presenter, and he does the Winning Streak show, and he does other shows. He's similar to the Jim Bowen in England used to do the bully and you know, the darts and those type of clubs, a bit like even maybe Terry Whelan, or not Terry Wogan used to do, you know, when they do certain programs. And he also, Marty Whelan also was the Irish, he'd host the Irish Eurovision Song Contest for RTE, but he was on contract there, and that's how our television broadcaster operates. You get a contract. So when you hear somebody maybe who's a well-known figure on RT getting maybe 700,000, you have to realise, I just want to take the glare of my glasses a bit, you have to realise that that might be all they get for quite a while. So folks, I'm just taking the glare of my glasses, all they get. So he's on a contract, but he's retirement age. He should be retiring now. If he was a teacher, he'd be retiring now. But he hasn't a penny. He says he has no money. He has nothing. But there is also mention in the article that that his pension didn't materialise. And you notice right through my videos I talk about pensions and how something has changed. It used to be your pension was your pension. It was fairly safe and fairly secure. And all of my inquiries are that they're worth nothing. They're absolutely worth nothing. And the government knows that, and they're giving tax breaks to Irish people to buy properties or buy something else to try and make up for the loss of the pension, because they know there'll be pressure from people who find they have no pension. And they're doing that, but one of the effects of that is that other vulture funds on that are coming in, because there's nearly no interest on loans. They're coming in and they're buying up property that Irish people should be buying, and the government has had to meet about it. And this is what I decry. Everything has to happen. You have to be in the hole before they start to do something about it. Could nobody assess where's all our universities to tell us this is the effects of the policy they have? You know, they never think of these things, that actually we're putting Irish people away from buying their own homes. It's a terrible situation. Anyway, the thing about it is, so far we're not going to be able to do anything, because we have no, whatever is about Irish voters, they will not vote for change for now anyway. Now again, I go to Sean Quinn, and you may wonder why I talk about Sean Quinn. And it's simply this. About way back during the collapse, Sean Quinn was flying. He had every business, he had a finger in every pie. He admitted himself he was greedy, and he was a bit greedy. But he brought employment to an area of Ireland which was very, very lacking in employment. West Cavan, Leitrim, South Fermanagh, South Donegal, Sligo, that area. And he was great like that, and he made a good job of Cavan Town. He had his own insurance, and he had everything. He was supposed to have some marvellous advisors. I think he could have done with taking me on board. But anyway, what happened was he believed that the Celtic Tiger was going to go on forever, and he was going to buy Anglo-Irish Bank. So he bought shares in Anglo-Irish Bank when they were about €21 a share, and we say he bought them in July to pay for them the next year, hoping there'd be a way up to 50 or 60, and he'd make an absolute killing. He'd sell the shares, he'd have the shares, and he could buy more shares, and that he would eventually have a controlling stake in Allied Irish Bank. Sorry, in Anglo-Irish Bank. If I said Allied Irish Bank, I mean Anglo-Irish Bank, not Allied Irish Bank, okay? Anglo-Irish Bank. So he hoped to have a controlling stake. He mightn't agree with that, but we all know very well that if he handled a bank like that was involved in investing, he was at the source of the fountain. He could have great control and all that. The problem was he didn't realise that if the value of the shares went down, he had to cough up from his existing businesses. So the shares collapsed to almost nothing. Anglo-Irish Bank had assets on the books and buildings worth billions, which were worth very little. And this is what's building up, I believe, at the moment. I'm just checking my time here, folks. Yeah. So they had all this property at way inflated values, and that, I've said, is what a recession is. They say a recession is when there's no growth for 2 quarters in succession. I believe a recession is when the assets values in the books of companies are turned out to be overstated, often by 2 to 3 to 4 to 5 times. And the asset values of Anglo-Irish Bank, Anglo-Irish Bank, if Anglo-Irish Bank had the right asset values on all their property, they'd only take a nosedive. They wouldn't have taken a complete collapse. And now they were a zombie bank, essentially. Excuse me. So they had overstated assets, and Quinn bought in which essentially meant he took a stake in all those buildings and all that stuff, and they weren't worth anything like that, and down it went. So he then found himself having to pay 2.8 billion to buy these shares, because the people who sold them, they got out, they had made their money, they had their shares, they sold them, he bought them, and he had to pay. And maybe he thought you didn't have to pay, but I can tell you, on the financial market, you do pay. There's no way out of this. Now, he found himself before the High Court and Mr. Justice Peter Kelly, and that was that. Now, there's talk about how much they got of him and all that, but the fact of the matter is, he has lost all, as far as I know. I don't believe he owns Quinn Glass. I know he doesn't own the Steve Russell Hotel, as he called it. That's our little baby, the little wee social place, big social place. He doesn't own it. He doesn't own anything, as far as I can see. I haven't seen any Quinn on the cement, and the name is moved to Mannock, which is the second part of Fermanagh, and this has a new name. So he's been ousted out of that, and there have been violent attacks and things which I won't go into here. But the point about it is that when this all collapsed, the Irish government could have bailed them out. Now you might say, oh, let them go, everyone else has to take it. But what I claim is that had they given Quinn a break, borrowed whatever they have to do, give 2.8 billion to him, or most of it at least, on the strict condition that he would sign and agree that he would always pay back every halfpenny with interest. The kind of a fella Quinn was, he'd have agreed. He'd have agreed. And hopefully he lives a long time. He's about 70 years of age at the moment. Maybe 71. There's plenty of life in him. And he would have realised he made enough mistake, and if they had to meet him halfway, he'd have said, right, let me run my businesses and I'll trade my way out of this. Now you might say the taxpayer would have to give him a big lump of money. We're already paying extra in our insurance. But it has happened before for others. Many's another one got it. I remember years ago insurance companies being bailed out and bailed out. The difference at Quinn is that A few years after, and in the last few years, there has been an upsurge in economic activity in Ireland. There's a building boom at the moment. There's a shortage of materials and all that. And he would have paid back. He'd be paying back. And by about now, in my humble opinion, if all his businesses were left intact, I know his hotel would be hit with the virus, but with all other things, and even that, he would have managed to scrape up most of it. And by now, at least 3/4 would have been paid back to the Irish taxpayer. And he would do that. That was the kind of him. He'd do it with a vengeance, and he'd be, we're paying back. He'd pay back every penny, and he'd pay back interest. That's what would have happened there. And you'd have none of this public outcry about what happened to him and all this. Now, I'm not a big supporter of his and all that. He made mistakes. But still, we are borrowing at the minute. We have borrowed 210, roughly, 208, 9, 10 billion euros as of now. If you go on the internet, you'll find it there. It's about 208 billion euros. After the economic collapse, we owed 64 billion, and it was all hoo-ha about this 64 billion. Inflation may have made that up to about 75 billion. But still, we owe 210 billion. And there's not a word about it. Everyone's perfectly happy with it and all to that. So what I'm saying is, a huge business like that could have been saved and kept in the original owners. And I think that Quinn himself and his family and that would have accepted state intervention. Of course, there'd have to be supervisors. But it would have actually been the best bet. And the taxpayer now would be getting back more from him. And would be finding money now that they pay that and be coming back in. And those businesses would now be thriving. I think to some degree the green nature of the government is against the like of him, with lorries running up and down the roads and flying around the place and using fossil fuel and cement, but it's still happening anyway. And that's the way it went. I think that when you look at it in the round and what money goes and what money's wasted and everything else, to let him go like that was not wise. I think if he had been better connected, if he had been different, I think that he would have been rescued. But they let him go and they threw him to the wolves, and it's a sad situation in many ways. I don't know what will happen in the long term. Those industries up there needed a bit of sparkle, and they needed someone from the area that knew it. Maybe they'll do all right, maybe they won't. I hope they do survive. But the thing about it is, I just bring that to your attention. Have a think about it. You'll probably say, no, taxpayers shouldn't be caught for everything. There's a big difference in being bailed out where you never pay anything back, and a huge hole, and leaving him there. You didn't need any NAMA, you didn't need any asset management. Leave him in it with control, and he would have, in my opinion, paid all back, and he'd do it with gusto. He wasn't a man to deceive. There's nothing like that in him. He'd do it with a blaze, and maybe we were better off we did. But this is why I say our state never gets it right. And what I would ask my viewers is to always realise Ireland is a terrible place for mistakes, for ignorance, on behalf of the entire political system. It may never change, and I don't think it'll ever change it. But we can know about it. There's no reason why we don't know about it. We can actually know what it is, and my job is to try and enlighten people so that they know exactly what happened. Now, it's easy to be wise after the event. I can tell you there'll be some, and still are, some bailouts going on, some money wasted, and all that going. So with that, folks, give me a thumbs up or a thumbs down. I think it was an opportunity missed. I think that was the right way to go, and I think it would have happened for most people and most companies, but it didn't happen for Quinn because he was seen as somewhat of an outlier. Bye, and we'll see you back. Thank you very much.